The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Snow Software and ITAM webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about Java SE8, as you can see from the screen. A few announcements here as how we're going to run this presentation for you. Your lines are going to be muted and remain muted. To ask questions, though, they are most welcome, and we're going to have a question and answer period at the end. There's a spot on your GoToWebinar control panel that says type message here. You are welcome to do that at any point in the presentation. When we reach the end of the presentation, then we will go through those questions. If there's more questions that can be answered during the session, we will go ahead and follow up with answers following the presentation by our speakers. Our speakers today are Chris Denboer, Director, Product Management of Snow Software, and Sarah Rabet, Product Marketing Manager at Snow Software. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Jenny. Oh, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our short webinar, where we will be talking about the effects of Oracle's announcement that from January 2019, Java SE8 public updates will no longer be available for business, commercial, or production use without a commercial license, although it will remain free for general purpose computing usage. So, what does it mean, and how are Oracle customers affected? And what do you need to do to find out about your Java usage to understand what you should do? So as Jenny said, my name is Sarah Rabet, and I'm joined by my colleague, Chris Denboer, who was an Oracle LMS auditor in a previous existence, so he's very well placed to share his insights with us. Our aim in this webinar is to help you understand this complex subject and give you pointers as to what you should do and look at and the options we see available to you. As Jenny mentioned, there will be an opportunity to post questions for us to answer at the end of the session. So let's get started. This is the agenda, and these are the topics we'll cover today. To start, we'll take a look at how we arrived at this point in Java's history, how Oracle define usage and customer types, and how the commercial features also need to be considered when looking at Java usage. I'll then hand over to Chris, who will cover how support is changing and what customers should do to put them in the best possible position, and how we at Snow can help. So, in a recent blog, Sharat Chanda, who is the Senior Director of Java SE Product Management at Oracle, said Oracle is keeping Java free and open, providing stability, performance and security updates to the current version at no extra cost. During this webinar, we'd like to look at how Oracle will deliver this, given the announcement about no more public updates for Java SE8. As we all know, Java is one of the most popular programming languages in the world, with millions of Java-based applications created and many more applications that won't work without having Java installed. When Sun first released Java in 1995, it did so under a proprietary software license, but in 2007, Sun relicensed Java under a general public license to make Java free to all under an open source model. Oracle acquired Sun in 2010, and part of the agreement was that Oracle would continue to make Java available free of charge under the open source model. Oracle has done this under its Oracle Binary Code License Agreement. But this all started to get complicated when Oracle started to create additional commercial features to run with Java SE, but made them available as separately licensed products, specifically Java SE Advanced and Java SE Suite. And then in 2014, Oracle introduced a new desktop license, Java SE Advanced Desktop. A further addition to this is that in the latest price list, Perpetual licensing is no longer available, only subscription. So it looks as though this could be another push to get customers to move to the cloud. Chris, do you have any views about this change to the price list? Sorry, I jumped ahead on my screen.
No, yeah, it's relatively new. We noticed at the beginning of 2019 that the perpetual licensing was no longer available on the price list. They had mentioned this before, that was the case, but it does indeed look like Oracle's trying to push its customers into subscriptions more and more, and this is what we're seeing across the board, basically.
Thanks, Chris. So whether you have Whether you pay for Java or not isn't just dependent on the version of Java you're using, but how you are using it. Before diving into the complexities, it's worth a reminder on what Java SE is made up of as standard and free of charge under the Oracle Binary License Code Agreement. Java SE is made up of several features and components. These include the Java Development Kit, the JDK, and Java FX Software Development Kit, the SDK, the Java Runtime Environment, the JRE, together with the Java FX Runtime and JRocket JDK. And the commercial features are those that Oracle has developed on top of Java SE. One of the most common commercial features is the MSI Enterprise JRE installer. Many end users use this to distribute Java runtime to desktops and laptops, but should be aware that it requires a license if it's been used for internal business operations, production, or commercial purposes. The important thing to know, though, is if the commercial features are being used to design, develop, and test programs, then no license is required. Commercial features only need a license if they're being used for business operations, production, or commercial purposes. So this is how it was, and it's now changing, or rather I should say it's changed from January. If you're using Java SE for general purpose computing or for development, then this is still free. Chris, have you got an example of general purpose computing, please?
Yeah, it's basically running an application. I mean, even home users that are using it for games, it could potentially be something. So that is what really meant with general purpose computing. Just common computer tasks on personal desktops, notebooks, that sort of thing.
Thanks, Chris. But if it's been used in a production or a commercial environment, then a license would definitely be required. So when you look into your Java usage, you need to know what you are using and how you are using it. Before we move on to look at the support roadmap, it's worth looking at how Oracle define their customer types. They classify customers for support as this has an impact on whether they are eligible for public updates. At a high level, they classify them into three types. You have Oracle customers, commercial customers, and personal users. Oracle customers are those with an active Java subscription or valid support contract that includes Java SE under its use rights. Again, Chris, over to you for an example of contracts that could include rights to use Java.
So besides the standard licenses for Java, such as the Java SE Desktop, Advanced Desktop, or Suite, you can have a subscription. But you can also have other Oracle products that include a license for Java. It could be WebLogic, for instance. You have Internet Application Server Enterprise Edition. PeopleSoft licenses, they all include the right to use Java SE as well.
Thank you. The next one down is commercial customers. These are non-Oracle customers, so the ones who don't have a valid support contract, who use Java SE for business, commercial, or production purposes as part of a Java application developed internally or delivered by a third party. And personal users are users using Java SE to develop applications as a hobby, or for educational purposes, or to play games or run applications. Chris, do you have anything to add to that, to those definitions, before I hand over to you to talk about the support?
No, I mean, the most common one here will be the commercial users, and those are the most interesting ones from a license perspective here. Oracle customers will already usually have a right to use Java for commercial purposes, but the commercial users that are using Java for commercial purposes without a license, and those are the ones that will definitely need to take a look at their Java usage to understand if they are actually licensed to do this correctly.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to hand over to you now to talk about the support roadmap.
Sure. So this slide displays the support roadmap for Java as it currently exists. So the recent announcement was for the long-term support version 8, which was introduced in March 2014. And recently it has been announced that starting from January 2019, there will no longer be public updates available for commercial purposes. So this means that unless you are as a customer willing to accept using a version of Java that is no longer updated, you will require a commercial license for this. So the next upcoming release or update of Java will be in April, and that will no longer be available as a public free update. So you will need a license for that. Exception to this is the personal user. They can still use updates until the end of 2020, but for production purposes, this is no longer available. So you see that Oracle is shifting away from their old license that was still providing free public updates, moving more into a 6-month cadence where new features will be released in subsequent versions of Java, such as 9 and 10. And they will completely change the way that Oracle Java is licensed with version 11, which will basically come in 2 flavors: a commercial license, which will have enterprise support and enterprise management capabilities, and a open source license for still free usage through the Openjdk release. But they will move away from the old way of doing it, which were the public updates. That will no longer be available to customers going forward. And this does impact a lot of customers or users of Java that are reliant on a specific version, such as 8, because it was an LTS version. They will need to make a choice in how they will continue to use, either accept not updating or acquiring a license going forward, or move to alternatives. So we'll discuss it on the next slide, please, Sarah. So possible courses of action that customers can take after this announcement. It's I think important to understand first what type of usage customers are making. So identify which of the usage of Java would fall under commercial business use and which wouldn't. And if you understand that and have a view on that, then you have a couple of options. First, you could stay with your current version of Java SE 8. That could be a course of action to take. That still falls within the old licensing scheme. So as long as you don't use commercial features for production purposes, and you use it for general purpose computing, that's still totally valid. You can use your old license to do that. You can, of course, always go with each subsequent version of Java SE and update every 6 months. That's probably not a good course to take for production purposes, but it's valid from a licensing perspective. You could move to the Openjdk that Oracle is also releasing. That is interchangeable with the Oracle Java JDK that they are releasing. It's just not supported in the same way as Oracle Java is. You could, of course, go to Oracle and get a license and get support and updates. As we've seen, they will provide updates for a number of years going forward for Java SE 8. The extended support or the premier support will continue up to 2022, and extended support will be available up to March 2025. That is a possibility, and paying Oracle for support and updates through a license or a subscription also allows you to use each previous version and upcoming version as well. So that's definitely a possibility. Another option that you could have is paying another company for support of Oracle Java. So you could go with licensing through operating systems in some cases, or go to the Adopt Openjdk organization and get support that way. Or lastly, the alternative could be that you license it through existing licenses that you have for other products that already include the right to use Java SE. So all of these are options that are on the table for customers, and it depends a little bit on the type of usage and the requirements that you have as an organization, which would be the best course of action for you as an organization to take.
Chris, can you give an example of existing licenses that might exist that cover Java?
Yeah, so we mentioned a couple before. WebLogic that Oracle sells as well comes included with Java SE. In some cases, Java SE Advanced or Suite. Internet Application Server Enterprise Edition does include Java SE. You have Web Center. You have PeopleSoft, even old BEA licenses used to include some Java features as well. So there are a number of products coming from Oracle that include the right to use Java. So that's definitely a possibility and something you need to investigate as an organization.
Thanks, Chris.
So I guess the next slide. So how can IT asset management in general help you? I think the first thing to understand in any organization is, what do I have? Do you actually make use of Java? On which machines? Is it the full JDK? Is it just the runtime environment? Which versions do I have? So all of this would be the starting point for any asset management activity related to Java. So Snow can definitely support in that. We have the ability to identify with our agent technology the version and edition of Java that is being deployed within your organization. In some cases, we can see usage as well. And in some cases, we can identify some of the commercial features that are in use. And this is definitely the starting point for any IT asset management activity you do when it comes to Oracle Java. Understand what you have, where you have it, and then you would need to identify the type of usage that you make of Java. We can identify if this is just for testing purposes, of course, or this is for business processing or production purposes, but we can definitely support in identifying where Java is running and on which machines it is installed. So that would be a way where Snow can support. Of course, our partners can use this information as well to support you with identifying the risk that you have within your organization, if there is any risk, and potentially a course of action to take based on that data.
All right, thank you, presenters, for that information. Now, I have shared with you, presenters, the questions that came in, and there's more still coming in that I'll be sharing with you. Keep in mind, as you answer the questions, many of them were asked as you went along, and you might have partially answered them or completely answered them before reaching this question and answer period. So if you would please go ahead and take a look at the first one, Chris and Sarah, that I sent to you. Do you want me to read it out for everyone, or would you like to do that?
Jenny, can you read them out so everybody can hear them, please?
Sure. So the first question is, Java SE, the runtime or the development kit prior to JDK 11 is under BCL license. It requires a license only if commercial features are used, correct? And then the other part of the question, how can we detect the commercial features?
So it requires a license indeed if commercial features are used for anything other than testing, prototyping, and developing. But it's not only the case that you only use a commercial license or require a commercial license if commercial features are used. It's also the case that if you use Oracle Java for anything other than general purpose computer under the BCL, you still require a license. So the best example that I can give here would be, like, if you have something like, for instance, a Blu-ray device or you know, software that's embedded in wireless mobile telephones or something like that. If Java's in there, that still requires a license, but it's usually licensed through the product itself. But it's not for free. That does require a specific commercial license. Now, how can we detect if commercial features are used or enabled? It depends a little bit. There are ways to do this. I think it goes a little bit beyond what we can do in this webinar. This is a kind of a technical response, but there are ways to extract the information on some of the commercial features, at least, that are deployed and used. So we might want to take that offline and provide information on how we can detect that.
All right, good. The questions will be provided to Snow Software, and they'll be able to respond later. Moving on to the next question. Where can we find a complete list of third-party vendors that cover Java for their clients?
It's a good question. I'm not entirely sure if that exists. You know, there are fairly complete lists coming from Oracle. You can always find what's covered by other Oracle licenses. But I don't believe a full list of all products that contain a license for Java is available. At least I don't know if of any. I've never seen that. I know that there's a list on. There's some information available on, let's say, Linux distributors that are distributing it as part of their operating system, or third-party organizations that support Java, such as Azul or IBM. But I don't know if that list is complete, if there are potentially others. I'm sure there are, but I don't believe there's a full list available.
All right, good. Thank you for that information. The next one is regarding Snow itself. Snow DIS database, is it set up to help identify the footprint so we can begin discussions with the users and or responsible parties on next steps?
So our DES database is set up to identify certain footprints. So it definitely will provide you with the information as a starting point. There are still some things that we currently cannot identify based on just raw inventory. There are some things that we will probably need to develop some scripts to capture more information and be even more thorough in the reporting that we can do, and that's something that my team is currently working on to develop a solution for that. But what we can provide to you is already in a database and is available to all our customers running our agents.
All right, good, thank you. Now this is another Snow-specific question. You might have addressed it. Java is required for Snow agent deployment. How's Oracle's changes impacting the license requirements in such a scenario?
So again, it does impact our solution going forward. So we recently introduced support for Openjdk, which is possible now to use with our agent technology as an alternative to Java from Oracle. But it's also possible to use the runtime environment that is delivered through either an operating system in Linux, for instance, or licensed through the distributor of your operating system. That's also a possibility. So Snow is relatively vendor agnostic when it comes to Java. It's just important for specifically the Oracle agent and our Unix agent to have a runtime environment that it can run on. But Openjdk is an alternative that we support.
All right, good, thank you. Now there's some examples, questions coming in about specific products, but for those attendees, I'm going to switch. There's quite a number of questions. I'm going to switch to the general questions first, and if we don't get to your specific product questions, then we will, the Snow will be able to address them afterwards. So here's one I think you have addressed. Our biggest challenge is trying to find out what Java is being used, where it would be covered under a parent application agreement. How can Snow find how and what is used for it? Okay.
So that would mean so that's currently not something that we can do. We don't tie the usage of Java to any specific application. That is something that I'm looking into with my team, if that is possible to make that link. But that is currently not something we can do with our basic inventory solution. So unfortunately, that is still a limitation of the system at this time. But it is definitely something we are looking into to make that link between the usage of Java and the specific application or applications that are making use of Java.
All right, thank you. Now, the next question is about the Snow OMO module, which uses Java. And it actually is a good question, applying it directly to your product. It uses Java. Is it counted as a production usage, and does it require a commercial Oracle Java license?
So it would fall under general purpose, but again, going forward, if you want, support, if you're using Oracle Java SE8, at least the runtime there to run our OMO agent, as I mentioned before, that would require a license. So that for that reason, we are now supporting Openjdk as an alternative to use the JRE in that to run our agents going forward, which is still available without a commercial license.
Very good, thank you. And for right now, that completes the questions that we have from the audience. You are, of course, going to receive information. You'll receive an email follow-up from Snow Software, and you would be able to respond to that as well. And there's, of course, some contact information for you you could reference this webinar. The recording will also be available on the ITAM website and a Snow Software website, a link to it early next week, no later than early next week. So please look for your answers there. There's one question that's come in, Chris, before we completely end out. Has Snow heard any rumors from their customers about being audited for Oracle Java usage?
So what I've heard, and I speak quite frequently to my former colleagues at Oracle, is that for now the LMS organization is in a bit of a holding pattern. And we have heard from a couple of our customers that they have received some letters from Oracle, but it's mainly from the sales organization up till now. That doesn't mean that Oracle LMS won't change this, of course, and we're not sure if that will happen. But the changes in licensing rules going forward do make it probable that Oracle will take some action on this, as it's a challenge that most customers using Java will have, and it's definitely something that they need to worry about.
Very good, thank you, and thank you to both of our speakers today, Chris and Sarah. And any additional information, you'll receive some follow-up, or you'll be able to listen again to this presentation on either of those two websites. I thank you all for attending. That concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.